Welcome back to the advisory table. This episode's guest is an award-winning Toronto-based architect, best known for her work as co-founder of Smart Density. She is an industry advocate for missing middle housing and a champion of countering suburban sprawl, and who herself walks the walk by living an urban-centered, car-free, park-adjacent lifestyle. Please welcome Ms. Naama Blonder.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. That's a beautiful intro.
Thank you for doing this, Naama. I really appreciate it. Why don't we start with your story? What brought you from your early days in architecture and urban planning to being such a visible advocate for housing reform?
The short answer, there's no other way. Like, if we want to see change, it needs to go beyond the boundaries of your company, and especially in a city like Toronto. And I moved here. I know people can't believe me when I say that. Toronto was my affordable option. I come from a city with a very high cost of living, and in my mid-20s, I just couldn't see a future for myself and moved to Toronto. And since then, Toronto's affordability has been in a severe decline.
Let's talk a little bit about missing middle, because the term missing middle, it's starting to get a lot more attention these days. Mm-hmm. I think in large part due to your work. But not everybody knows what the missing middle is. So can you briefly outline it for us and tell us why it's so important in the current landscape?
So let's tackle it from two perspectives. First of all, the dry definition. Missing middle, if you take a look right now outside of this beautiful window, you will see that Toronto has about 70% single-family houses, and the rest is really high, dense peaks that we needed, right? This is not a pitch against tall buildings in any shape or form. So missing middle is referring to built form in height, anything between the single-family houses and higher density. But we also need to remember that could relate to middle in a way of income and demographics, and many ways that the middle is could be the interpretation of it. I do have a bit of criticism when it comes to the missing middle. When we are talking about a city like Toronto, thinking that a fourplex here and there is going to solve our housing crisis, we're just missing the mark. It is nice maybe in the context of the GTA, but for me, the new policy of major streets, which also falls under the missing middle, which is just, again, the definition, up to 6 stories and 60 units, that is the bare minimum when it comes to Toronto. The city just released a report of how many permits they got for the plexes, triplexes and fourplexes, and the number was 452. If you take that number and you put it in a tower, that is equal to 2 30-story towers. All of this policy,
right?
For what? For 2 towers that in good days the city has seen once a week, something at this scale. Right. So you just put it in perspective of how much energy, how much the debate in council goes for. It doesn't mean that we don't need it, but it's not moving fast enough at the same time. Not to mention that major streets, as we are recording this conversation, is still under appeal. So we're not even...
You mentioned the city, particularly in the work that you do, and there's a sense of ideology oftentimes that provides a constraint, okay? Mm-hmm. One question I wanted to ask you was, how do we balance idealism or ideology and pragmatism, okay? So in other words, we know that these constraints exist. They certainly are there in the municipal approval process, as you just mentioned. Developer pro formas offer constraints sometimes. Developers are going to look and they're going to say, well, look, I got to make money.
Mm-hmm. Which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, of course.
Profit is a method to get things done.
100%. So I guess the question is, how do we dance this dance between real ideology and idealism of providing meaningful communities, meaningful housing, and pragmatism?
Oh, I actually thought when you say ideology, I thought you were saying about all those who are objecting it, because that also comes from ideology.
Oh, sure. Well, you can address either side.
Because for me, what you're saying about you call it ideology, and it's really, it's a very simple combination of doing the right thing and that it needs to be like everything I do, I understand that it's the bottom line needs to work. I try to push the status quo. Everything is rooted in real constraints. No one is proposing anything that is pie in the sky. I don't think there is a conflict between those two areas. I think profit is, as I said, is a tool. It's a method to get things done and get it the best way. In my world, there's no conflict. The only conflict that exists in my world is political ideology. I don't even think that Canadians understand how much of a NIMBY culture we have.
Yeah.
So here's the conflict.
So maybe explain to our viewers what NIMBY means.
Not in my backyard.
Right.
It's essentially empowering them. Our planning system empowers them to object anything higher, different than a single family house by steps away from. So and it is key. Like for me, anything that is near transit, it's almost like you need to tax it if it's low density.
Right. I'm very intrigued by this board game that you developed.
Okay.
I love it. So I guess the part that I'm really sort of compelled by, that kids play the game so much differently than adults.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, first of all, the game is the first thing I did when I opened the business, and I did it as educational tool. I'm hesitant to say engagement, as an educational tool, and the idea is you need to collect uses. It's a giant board game, right? Like it's not something that anyone will buy for their family. It's a giant board game, 4 by 6 feet. And you walk in Toronto, it's over the Toronto map, and you collect uses. And the idea is to assemble an urban block with all the uses, but the block is too small to have everything in one store.
Yes. How do you strategize?
Exactly. Yeah. But and it's really interesting to see how a lot of the kids will say, I'm going to put housing on top of school so I can take the elevator. Like they have really simple solutions. Right. And it's really funny because a school in Podium is still one of the most controversial discussions the city has for some reason. So this is the game. And
adults go, wait a second, we're going to put it here.
Whoa, that's too tall. They're telling their kids like, oh no, it's too tall. Don't you think it's too tall? Right. So it's really for me as a conversation tool with the parents in an unadversarial way, because I believe that when you come and you already talk when they're like on a specific site, on a specific project, it's too late. You're too late.
Right.
It needs to happen way before that.
Last question.
Yes.
If you could wave a magic wand and fix one systemic barrier in our planning system,
it's the family housing stuff. Since this is a very business environment, there's a business book that I read called Blue Ocean Strategy. I don't know if you're right. It's a great, one of the classic. You should read it.
Okay.
But Blue Ocean, basically they're saying there's Red Ocean where all the companies compete, and you need to create yourself a Blue Ocean.
Okay.
And the book explains how you do it. But one thing that they're saying, think of something that in 25 years from now will be taken for granted that doesn't exist today, and see how you can walk towards that future. And for me, I don't even want to think of a future where Toronto hasn't figured out family housing. I am very fortunate to be living in a 3-bedroom condo, something that I consider for my family, and we live downtown and we love it. But unfortunately, many of my friends have been pushed to the very, very far suburbs. Yeah. And I don't think it's 100% out of choice. Like maybe some of them would go for that option, but I think for others, if they had an option here, I strongly believe that they would go for it.
Naama, I think with your continued advocacy, we'll get there. Naama,
a lot of pressure.
Thank you so much for
Thank you for having me.
Really, really appreciate it.